Online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. President Trump promising to send new Patriot missile defense systems to Ukraine and letting the world know that the EU will be paying for it.
I haven't agreed on the number yet, but they're going to have some because they do need protection. But the European Union is paying for it. We're not paying anything for it, but we will send it. It'll be business for us, and we will send them Patriots, which they desperately need, because Putin is really surprised a lot of people. He talks nice, and then he bombs everybody in the evening. So there's a little bit of a problem there, and I don't like it.
I don't like it. And sitting with NATO Secretary General yesterday, he had this ultimatum, frankly, to the Russians and their KGB dictator. You got 50 days.
We are very unhappy, I am, with Russia, but we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine, and would like to see it end. It wasn't my war, it was Biden's war. It's not my war. I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple.
So essentially Putin has to Labor Day. What will this change in policy from the Trump administration mean for the Ukrainians? For more on this, please be joined by Cliff May, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and foreign affairs columnist for the Washington Times. Cliff, thanks for being with us.
Dan, always good to be with you.
So, is this something that will sustain these Patriot missile systems, assuming they arrive with all due speed? Is this something that will sustain the Ukrainians' fight? I know they had a statehood celebration, and and Zelensky is talking the talk, but the assessments seem to be coming in more and more anxious about the prospect that the Ukrainians can hold Putin out of Kyiv for much longer. Well,
first of all, my view is the president's made a very good decision. You and I have talked about this going back months. This was what I was hoping, that the president would come to this conclusion, would understand who Vladimir Putin is, that Putin is not somebody who wants to make peace. He's not somebody willing to compromise. He wants to subjugate the Ukrainians. He wants to make Ukraine into a vassal state like Belarus is, or a colony like Chechnya and Tatarstan are. And that you're not going to, he says nice things, but he's killing women and children every day. It's a terrorist war. He is targeting and has been targeting residential neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, all of that. So this is important. First of all, the Patriot missiles give the Ukrainians a chance to knock death out of the skies before it reaches them. Very, very necessary. The sanctions we're talking about, the secondary sanctions, will begin to cut off the funding that Putin needs to continue this war. And one thing that was left, I would say, slightly ambiguous, is whether Ukraine will also be getting long-range missiles and permission to utilize them to hit military targets deep inside Russia. Biden never allowed that. I think it's necessary to inflict that kind of pain on Putin so that he eventually says, all right, I'll agree to a ceasefire. But what Trump has been saying for a long time is, look, you conquered about 20% of Ukrainian territory, the east parts of this, a lot of the south. You got a land bridge to Crimea, which you took from Ukraine and annexed in 2014. Why don't you be satisfied with that, and we'll just stop at this point? And Putin would say, yeah, maybe, let me think about that. I don't know. I've got some concerns. I think at this point, Trump understands he was not going to stop. The Ukrainians are not going to give up their freedom, their independence, their sovereignty, their culture, their language. Even if it came down to a total occupation, it would be a guerrilla war. But that would be very bloody. It's very bloody right now.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I'll stop there for now. But what Trump is giving the Ukrainians a fighting chance, and I hope he does even a little more. It's certainly what people like me have been pushing for a very long time, and I'm very pleased that Trump recognized the reality of the situation.
Are you concerned about escalation? I note that the timing of this is Putin on his way to Beijing for another meeting with Xi and his people, and I just wonder if he is, working a side deal with the Chinese communists to provide some backstop with respect to whatever may come from the U.S.
Yeah, he has had all along support from the Chinese communists, technological support, economic support, the oil that is being sold. That's why President Trump is talking about secondary sanctions. Secondary sanctions mean the sanctions are not on Russia; they're on those who buy oil from Russia. That's mostly China and India, and that's who would be sanctioned in order to stop that trade, in order to cut off the financing from Russia's trading partners who are funding this war. In addition, of course, he is also, but Putin now has been getting support from Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Tehran, Shahid missiles, and there's a missile factory they helped him build as well. He's also been getting a huge amount of support from North Korea. Most infamously, of course, Korean soldiers who come and fight for Russia and against Ukraine, but probably more significantly, munitions, artillery shells in particular, huge numbers. More artillery shells have been sent from North Korea to Russia than the U.S. manufactures in a year. And this is also part of what's important here for the U.S. As we sell Patriot missiles, as we sell other kinds of missiles and other kinds of munitions, with NATO picking up the bill as they should, we can expand our defense industrial base, which has become very weakened, very small, very sclerotic over the years. We need a much bigger industrial base. And that, by the way, this is not the main thing, but it's an important thing. That means skilled workers in jobs, American factories, turning this out for people, for those countries we think should have them, and not for those countries we don't. And we make the best weaponry in the world, and that's important for us, and that's important for our allies, and it's important that our enemies know. But the main point I want to make to you is all along we are fighting, the Ukrainians are fighting Russia backed by North Korea, Chinese communists, and the Islamists of Tehran. That's the axis. Got to recognize that's what's going on. I believe we should have allies. Our allies shouldn't be dependents. Our allies should be partners. The Ukrainians are doing severe damage to our number 2 adversary in the world, and that's Vladimir Putin.
It's interesting that some of those people that wear the Ukrainian lapel pins and post the Ukrainian flag and otherwise support Ukraine in their effort to repel the Russian incursion don't feel the same way about Israel, that I would argue is doing similar work towards in response to our enemies like Iran and its proxies and so forth. I wanted to.
Yes, by the way, you're quite right. There's a principle at work here, and it should apply equally when we have enemies fighting common. When we have allies willing and able to fight common enemies, it makes sense to support them.
Yeah, that
especially if they're saying you don't need to send your troops, but we would like to buy your weapons, and we do want to fight those enemies. We do want to see Putin reduced in stature as a military power for all kinds of reasons, which I think should be obvious, but I'm happy to go into. And you're absolutely right. The same principle applies in both cases.
But I mean, yeah, right. So that seems, what you said seems fairly straightforward, but it turns out not to be on the left. And frankly, some of the more conspiratorial on the right with respect to Israel. I wanted to play this clip. I mean, I know that this is not someone who is renowned as a geopolitical thinker, except in his role as Saul on Homeland, which doesn't count. Mandy Patinkin, though, because he gave a very theatrical challenge to Jews worldwide. And this is the sort of emotional appeal that you have being made in, sort of elite circles like the arts. And so it's interesting. He goes full Inigo Montoya here in his in his cri de coeur against Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government. Take a listen and get your reaction.
I was in Philadelphia getting ready to do a concert with Patty, my dear friend Patty LaPone. And then I go up to the hotel room. Catherine was in the hotel room. And the movie, The Princess Bride, was on. She was watching it. And just as I walked in the room is that final scene in the movie where Inigo is sitting by the window with the man in black. And the man in black asks Inigo, would he like to be the next Dread Pirate Robertson? And the Inigo Montoya actor, who was me,
I remember,
at 36 years old, I think, it was 1986, do the math, I was born in 52,
34.
said these words, which I did not really know what they meant, that William Goldman wrote, which I think are the singular greatest words I've ever read. And those words are, were, and always will be. You know, I have been in the revenge business so long. Now that it's over, I do not know what to do with the rest of my life. And I ask Jews all over the world to consider what this man, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his right-wing government is doing to the Jewish people all over the world. They are endangering not only the state of Israel, which I care deeply about and want to exist, but they are endangering the Jewish population all over the world. He is the most dangerous thing, not just since October 7th. It has been a deeply troubled situation.
And endangering the Jews by endangering those in Gaza.
And to watch what is happening for the Jewish people, to allow this to happen to children and civilians of all ages in Gaza, for whatever reason, is unconscionable and unthinkable. And I ask you Jews everywhere, all over the world, to spend some time alone and think, is this acceptable and sustainable? How could it be done to you and your ancestors, and you turn around and you do it to someone else?
Well, I'm not Jewish, but I will note, by the way, I mean, since he just made essentially a overt insinuation to the Holocaust in comparison, Israel's Defense Army issued an urgent warning to all civilians still inside Gaza City and other neighborhoods to evacuate as fighting intensifies in Gaza, which is consistent with what the IDF does all of the time with respect to fighting and trying to minimize civilian casualties. So, I mean, the false equivalences of and really hysterical assertions of the left, as I think nicely encapsulated there by Mandy Patinkin.
Yes, you're quite right. I mean, I don't know how to explain it except to talk about the woke mind virus that seems to have infected him. Does he not know that after the October 7, 2023 invasion of Israel by Hamas and by a lot of Hamas-adjacent Gazans, the massacre, the terrible rapes, the beheading of children, the burning of families, the taking of hostages. There are still hostages. Gazans could have a ceasefire today. They could have had a ceasefire on any day since October 7th. All they would need to imagine that they would say, that Hamas would say through their friends in Qatar or whatever, however they or Egypt or whatever, we will release every hostage. We just insist upon a ceasefire, not peace, a ceasefire. You'd think the Israelis would say no. The Israelis would say yes. In the meantime, yes, the Israelis are trying to defeat Hamas rather than the alternative, which is to let Hamas rebuild and do what it's done before. Again, steal babies, kill women, all of the above. What does Mandy Patinkin really think, if he thinks at all? He's a good actor. I don't know that he thinks. He recites other people's lines. What does he think the Israelis should do about Hamas, or what they should have done about Hamas all this time? Hamas is genocidal as relates to Israel. That's in their charter. It has always been. They have told the Gazans, you have a choice. We either have victory or you become a martyr. You are to die for this cause. I believe there are many Gazans who don't want to die for Hamas. It doesn't mean they love Israel, but I think at this point they may realize, look at the suffering Hamas has brought upon us, and in exchange for what? But to leave Hamas in power and let them rearm again? But he doesn't address that. He just says, Benjamin Netanyahu, oh, he's so terrible. Oh, what is he doing? How are you to defend yourself if not in any other way? Or should they not defend themselves? Should the Israelis simply allow themselves to be slaughtered as Jews were slaughtered by the Nazis, who also were genocidal in World War II because the Jews then had no weapons, had no ability to defend themselves. The point of Israel is Jews defending themselves.
I mean, slaughtered on October 7th. I mean, by this very terrorist organization and in concert with its sponsors. I mean, yes. It's the false premise that this is some sort of avengement going on by the Netanyahu government. And the alternative seems to me, as you were pointing out, it's the appeasement that created this situation that provided for Hamas to plan and execute the horrific terrorist attack that they executed on October 7th. But I mean, that's sort of the left's posture is always, as we saw this illustrated in Biden, in the Joe Biden terms. This is sort of appeasement. It's the idea. It's thinking that terrorists are just friends we haven't made yet, and so forth. It's just the magical thinking.
Yes, right, and that they have grievances, and we can address those grievances. Let's give them a Palestinian state. Gaza was essentially a Palestinian state. The Israelis didn't interfere in Gaza. That's why they didn't know, great failure, what was going on there. The billions of dollars spent on this subterranean fortress into which the hostages were dragged, and with this fortress which protected Hamas while the Gazans had to walk above with no bomb shelters, no place to go, because they were to be used as human shields. Because Hamas read the left properly, read the UN properly, read the leftist media and the faux human rights organizations properly. They knew the more Gazans that died, it wouldn't be bad for Hamas, it would be bad for Israel. So the more, the merrier from Hamas's point of view. That is how it's always been.
Cliff May.
I know, yeah.
Cliff May, president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, foreign affairs columnist for the Washington Times. Cliff May, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
You too. And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Want to see if you could pay less in taxes? Try the quick and easy tax calculator at willsave.com. Yes, a free tax calculator. That's WILSAVE.com. Calculate how you could keep more of your hard-earned money and give less to Uncle Sam, especially in retirement. Get your free tax analysis today at willsave.com.